Hey, DJ Khaled doesn't want to perform oral sex, and everyone's mad about that. What? Poor DJ Khaled. What's up? And today I'm going to do another Eminem album review. The third last, actually, because I don't think I'll do a review on Hell the sequel. Not really. But yeah, Recovery. So, Marshall Mathers, formerly known as Slim Shady, but best known as Eminem himself. So, in the early years of Eminem, when he released Slim Shady LP, Marshall Mathers LP, and The Eminem Show, those three albums were great albums full of amazing and memorable and sticky tracks. They are really great, they are fun. It has some really goofy melodies and lyrics as well, and overall it's pretty versatile, grimy, and smart. And then in the year 2003, he kind of hits a low point with Encore because it's just a really gross and disgusting album because he's on drugs. And then in Relapse, released in 2009, he finally got rid of the drugs, but because of that, he released a really moody and absurd album. And then not too long after Relapse, we have Recovery, released in 2010. Right? Is it? I'll have to double check that. And what's really crazy about this album is that Recovery takes a completely different path from what Eminem had done on all his previous studio albums. It's pop. Of course, it's hip-hop, but instead of purely hip-hop, it's more like pop hip-hop, pop rap. And that is really different. And that's why Eminem kind of struggled on this album to get his hands on, some of these pop music and fully master it. This album is filled with poppy synths, casual ballady guitars, chords that sound really mainstream, thus cheap and kind of dumbed down. And this album also has really rough vocals from Eminem that are really layered as well, which is making it even more rough and harsh. And there are also tons of features on this album, including Rihanna, Pink, and Lil Wayne. But still, there are tracks on this album that aren't really that poppy of a track, including the album opener, Cold Wind Blows, which is a really harsh and sinister, but also grimy and kind of dancey song for an album opener. It actually surprises me somehow because it's not as bad as it sounds initially. And, it's a really harsh song though. It's full of curse words, swear words, and Eminem disses a lot of people, including Mariah Carey again. And it's just a really rough and angry and aggressive performance. Oh, I'm as cold as the cold wind.
Fuck your worms, you never seen such a sick puppy. Fuck it, a sick yuck. I want my duck sick, mommy.
And you know what? I'm gonna be generous, and I actually low-key likes this song. I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. The second track is Talkin to Myself, featuring Kobe. Just Kobe, not whatever. And this track is surprisingly poppy, and it's because it has these summery guitars that are also really casual. It feels like Eminem is singing this song while walking down the streets of like LA or something in a sunny day, because it's a really carefree and lighthearted track.
Can anybody hear me? Yeah. I guess I keep talking to myself. It feels like I'm going insane. Am I the one who's crazy?
And this track is basically about Eminem being lonely, but this is not any sad or intense song. Instead, it feels kind of sweet, kind of jumpy too. And that's quite odd for Eminem. I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. The third track is On Fire, which dips a little bit down in terms of quality, in my opinion, because this track, Eminem disses the critics back. And he's just really angry at the critics at how they don't consider his own feelings. But yeah, there are bad critics out there, bad music critics, but there are also tons of good music critics out there, so not all critics are bad. And this track is really like dramatic and fiery burning, and it has these backup vocals in the back that's just dramatic and theatrical, I guess. However, musically speaking, it's kind of bland, kind of run of the mill. So, yeah, overall the track feels like an encore track, but less gross and more aggressive. So I'm gonna give this a 6 out of 10. The fourth track is Won't Back Down, featuring Pink. And Pink's feature on this thing is trying to be threatening and edgy at the same time, but Pink's feature is actually not that bad on this track, to be honest. And besides of Pink's feature, musically speaking, this track has all these constant drum bangs and loud, wild guitars. That's why this track feels just slightly redundant. A 7 out of 10. The next track is WTP, which stands for White Trash Party.
Better watch out now, 'cause here we come. And we ain't stopping until we see the morning sun.
You know what? The vocal work on this track is actually kinda low-key catchy, and this track is actually lighthearted and kind of fun. But the verses are still kind of bland, a little bit more run-of-the-mill, and it tries to be a really speedy and energetic track with these choppy background synths going in the background. I just repeated the word background twice. I'm redundant. But yeah, it's not that impressive of a track, but it's not that bad either. It's decent at best. I'm giving it a 7 again. Next track is Going Through Changes, which is a more emotional and sad song from Recovery, and the refrain is really soulfully sung as well. It has some downtrodden strings and guitars, and this track is basically about, going through changes. Pretty self-explanatory. And I just like how, Eminem raps, and then after the verse, the song breaks into a beatless, refrain. I'm going through changes. Also a 7 out of 10 for this track. Wow, a lot of 7s, huh? Next track is the big single, Not Afraid. And at first, I really loved this track. In fact, this is one of the first few Eminem tracks that I've listened to in my lifetime. I think I've listened to this track when I was 10, 11, around that age, and I really liked this track when I first listened to it. However, this track kind of aged on me, and it felt a little bit more drab and a little bit more predictable now. So, but doesn't mean it's bad. It's just aged a little bit. And the reason being is that the chords is actually pretty predictable and cheap.
No ifs, ands, or buts, don't try to ask him why, how can he? From Infinite down to the last relapse album, he's still shitting, whether he's on salary, paid hourly, until he pals out or he shits his pals out of him.
However, I do kinda enjoy the marching drums on this track, and the chord progressions are really, really dramatic as well, which could be something great. However, it's not executed that well on this track. And this track tries to be really motivational and powerful, but it's a little pretentious too, because it's really over the top. And however, this track also has some really great rhymes, and also great lines as well. There's a line where Eminem admit the fact that, Encore and Relapse aren't that great of albums. And yeah, but still, this track is just really over the top and dramatic. You know, how Eminem think he got a tear in his eye and he's the king of the world and stuff, and a 7 out of 10. Next track is Seduction, and it has some sentimental and timely strings. And this track has some slow and dramatic verses and delivery from Eminem. And this track is about, you know, seduction, verbal seduction, being a psychological warfare. Again, it's really dramatic and over the top, but you know, it's also a pretty decent song, I guess. I'm also gonna give a 7 out of 10. The next track is No Love. You're about to understand the meaning of a beatdown madness. Yeah, that's Death Grips.
Snatch the mic from him, bitch, I'ma let you finish in a minute. Yeah, that rappers tight, but I'm finished with the greatest verse of all time. So you might wanna go back to the lab tonight and scribble out them rhymes you were gonna spit and start over from scratch and write new ones. But I'm afraid that it ain't gonna make no difference when I rip the stage and tear it in half tonight.
No Love by Eminem samples What Is Love, the famous track from the older times. And you know, the way this song is sampled on this track is actually pretty dope, you know. And the Lil Wayne feature on here, it's actually not that bad. It's actually pretty fun. And Eminem's delivery on this track is what really makes this track quite good, is because of the intense and quick-paced verses spit out rapidly by Eminem, and that's just really impressive, and it makes the song way more intense. I'm gonna try this. Snatch the mic from him, bitch. I'ma let you finish in a minute. Yeah, that rap was tight, but I'm about to spit the greatest verse of all time, so you might want to go back to the lab tonight and set fire to the mic and ignite the crowd. You can see the sparks from hot metal. I'm a little bit sicker than most shit's gonna get thick again. They say the competition is stiff, but I get a hot dick from the shit. Now stick it in. Where the fuck is Kanye when I need him? It's a difficult verse. Yeah, wow. So yeah, Eminem's verse on this thing, actually really impressive. And also, on the side note, the chord progression of this track is actually way harder to write than Not Afraid or Love the Way You Lie. And however, you can't really put the compliment on Eminem or the co-songwriters and the producers on this thing, because this track is literally sampled. But still, the chord progression on this thing is somewhat unique. So yeah, I'm actually gonna give this track a 9. Damn. The next track is Spacebound.
It's exactly what I thought it would be like trying to start over. I got a hole in my heart, but some kind of emotional roller coaster, something I won't go on. So you toy with my emotions, so it's over. It's like an explosion every time I hold you. I wasn't joking when I told you, you take my breath away. You're a supernova.
And this track is more spacey and moody and sad, but I actually like it, because one of the reasons why I like this track is because of the nostalgia that it brings. Again, Spacebound is also one of the first few Eminem tracks that I had ever listened to. And listening to... Man, I'm just stuttering now after that rap verse. Yeah, after listening to this song, or during the listen, actually, it just feels like something in the past, you know, sometime in the past, and it really brings me this nostalgia factor. And again, the chords on this track is more, it's a little harder to write, it's a little bit more thoughtful, and it's not as predictable and as cheap as the chords in Not Afraid or in other popular tracks. So that's one of the reasons why I like this track. And however, there are also a few, you know, flaws on this track, a few detrimental flaws, actually. And one of the flaws is that the vocals during the chorus is a little robot-y, is a little bit awkward. And there's one line where Eminem says, love is evil, spell it backwards, I'll show ya. Evil is Evil, and when you spell it backwards, it's live, Live. So if love spelled backwards, it's Evol, which is the initials for evolution. So it's now a good thing, right? So yeah, it's not the smartest line from Eminem. But still, this track is really emotional. It really gives an alienating and nocturnal feel, which is what I love. So still, despite the flaws, I'm still going to give this an 8. I know I'm pissing a lot of fans off, but as an 8 out of 10. Sorry, this is my opinion. The next track is Cinderella Man. Again, I have to apologize to some of the Eminem fans because I don't like this track. Not really.
Who can catch lightning in the bottle? Set fire to water coming out the nozzle on the fire hose. Quiet and swatter. Cinderella Man, Cinderella Man.
Because it has an obnoxious, clappy beat that doesn't go and accompany with any music almost, and the vocals on this thing is really dry, and the song overall feels really drab, and it feels like a lot is missing from the song. And this song tries to be a banger, but it really failed, you know. So this track really stands out from the track list for being surprisingly underwhelming and underwritten. I don't like this track. I'm sorry. Maybe there are fans out there who really love this track, but I just don't feel it. 4 out of 10. And then we have 25 to Life, and the vocals on this thing by this girl. It's like she's singing right in front of the mic. It's like she's singing like this, and I think it's intentional though. And this track is basically about Eminem's relationship with the hip hop industry itself, his love-hate relationship. More like hate on this track, just hate, but still with a bit of love. And this track has some ballady guitars, and the vocal delivery from Eminem, the rap verses from Eminem are actually way harsher, and you know, the soft guitars and the harsh, you know, delivery from Eminem, they just don't go well. It's just so yeah, 6 out of 10. And then the next track is So Bad. Man, this track is so underrated. Damn. And a lot of Eminem fans hate this track. I don't get it. Again, I'm gonna offend a few, you know, like Eminem fans on this video, but I like So Bad. You know, it's pretty goofy, but it's also pretty catchy. It has some elements of his past music. I'm so bad, I'm so good that I'm so bad.
So bad, I'm so good that I'm so bad. I guarantee I'll be the greatest thing you ever had.
It's a pretty fun song, it's a pretty melodic song, and I like the tune. 8 out of 10. And then up next we have Almost Famous. And the vocals on this track is the same, from the same girl as the, you know, track 25 to Life, and her vocals on this thing sounds like she's possessed, and you know, the instrumentals on this thing is always ascending in a harsh way, dun 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 dun. You know, it's a pretty okay track, but still it's a pretty harsh and rough track as well. And then it's Love the Way You Lie, which is one of the most popular and mainstream Eminem songs. And you know what? Same for Not Afraid. I loved this track a lot the first time I've listened to it. However, throughout time, you know, this track has really gone dry for me. And one of the reasons why is because this track has become super mainstream. Everyone's talking about it, everyone's singing it, you know, and everyone's singing that Rihanna part as well. Why are you doing this? However, when you put that, mainstream and popularity aside, this track is still a little drab, and uh, of course the chords is playing a huge role on this track, but it's still really predictable and cheap. It's one of those, pop chord progressions that you can come up with in a minute or two. Like, it's that cheap.
I can't tell you what it really is, I can only tell you what it feels like. And right now it's a steel knife in my windpipe. I can't breathe, but I still fight while I can fight. As long as the wrong feels right, it's like I'm in flight.
And the performance is not bad on this track. Rihanna's pretty good, to be honest, and Eminem's delivery is actually pretty okay. But the chords are pretty predictable. There are quite a few puns on the lyrics, I believe, including that window pane one. Is that necessary? The topic, the lyrics in this track is actually kind of sappy. It's like, I love the way you lie, love, it's painful, and, break up, arguing, lying, love and hate. Wow, so dramatic. Wow. Again, the guitars and Eminem's delivery that doesn't go well together. Not that well. However, it's not that terrible of a track either. I mean, 7 to a 6 out of 10. Before it's a 7. Now I just changed my mind. And then the album ending is You're Never Over, and surprisingly it has this poppy, jumpy synths that sounds like a grand and ambitious goodbye.
If Proof could see me now, I know he'd be proud. Somewhere in me deep down, there's something in me he found.
But overall the track is still pretty meh. It's still kind of mild, kind of weak. And again, this track is supposed to be very uplifting and very fun. However, Eminem's delivery on this track is again really harsh, really rough, really layered, and his delivery and the instrumentals do not accompany with each other well. They just sound like a mess together. I don't know why. It sounds like a clumsy beast trying to do a nice little ukulele ballad, and it doesn't work, man. It doesn't work. However, still, this album, it's pretty well produced. It's quite versatile. It's way more versatile than Encore and Relapse, to be honest, but not as diverse as the Eminem Show, though. Oh yeah, also I forgot to talk about the actual last track, the untitled track, and it is this awkwardly sleazy, low-key kind of jazzy track, but actually it's not that good of an album ender, to be honest, because it's just plain underwhelming and underwritten. Not that it's a bad song. Again, I can see that Eminem is trying hard to make this album versatile and stuff, and it did work. But however, this is not the ideal album ending. So yeah, probably a 6 out of 10. And a lot of the tracks on this album is actually okay. However, there are also a handful of tracks on this album that feels awkwardly poppy, and the vocals are really rough and layered. Like, that's not necessary. Why are you doing this? And there are also a lot of topics discussed on this album that isn't really that different from other topics that Eminem had discussed in his previous, music. It's still about, love and hate and the hip-hop industry and himself, yada yada. So it's not changed much. And there are also a few tracks that feels kind of drab, kind of underwhelming, and the reason being is that it feels like they have a melody, they have a pretty, I guess, solid and catchy melody that's not really for hip hop but more pop oriented, but they still somehow have to force a beat on that melody and make Eminem rap on it. That's why it feels kind of forced. But it's still a pretty okay album. If you ignore and omit the flaws, if you would forget some of the, lyrical mistakes and some of the harsher moments from Eminem's vocal delivery, this album is not that bad. Not that bad. Quality wise, this album may not be as good as Relapse in my opinion, but still, this and Relapse, they are pretty much a tie for me. It's like Eminem is still on the same level, but with different styles on Relapse versus on Recovery. So, yeah, the worst track is, unfortunately, Cinderella, man, and the best is No Love. I am giving Eminem's Recovery a 6 to a 7 out of 10. So, have you listened to Eminem's Recovery from 1 to 10? How about you rate it? Like if you like it, hate if you hate it. Pitchfork gave it a 2.8 or something. Damn! And subscribe if you want more. And this is just my opinion, okay? Don't get offended by this.